Sometimes folds result by layers of horizontal sedimentary rocks being pushed together from all sides. That's a little different than synclines and anticlines, where, for example, that would be like a piece of paper that you were pushing from two different sides and causing it to go up and down. But sometimes we get things pushed together from all sides. And then in cases like that, we can get something that looks like this, which is called a basin. So we can see, if we look at the cross section on the side here, we have the oldest rocks at the bottom, the youngest rocks at the top. Things are getting pushed together and everything is getting folded like this. So it's kind of like a syncline, except it's also happening on this side as well. So here we have the rocks getting pushed together. Here we have the rocks getting pushed together. And what we would see on the surface is that the youngest rocks would appear in the center, and then the rocks would get older and older as we move away from the center, no matter what direction we go from the center of this basin. And as we can also see here, all the rocks here are kind of going down into the ground, dipping into the ground towards the center of this basin. So no matter where we are going around the edge, if we were going to draw an arrow on here to show how the rocks are going into the ground, we would draw pointing down towards the middle of this basin here. There's still going to be, just instead of one line of area where everything's flat, like with a syncline, we're just going to have one point right in the middle of the basin where everything's flat, because as we move away in any direction, the rocks are now dipping down towards the center of the basin. One famous example of a basin in the United States is the Michigan Basin. So almost this entire part of the state of Michigan is a giant basin. If we were here in Detroit and found some outcrops of rocks, we would expect those rocks to be dipping down, to be going down into the ground towards the center of the Michigan Peninsula here. The same over here, the rocks would be dipping down towards the center where the yellow is here. And as we can see here, the youngest rocks occur in the center of this basin, and these are getting older and older down in this direction here. And as we move away from the center of the basin, we get into older and older and older and older rocks, and in this direction, older and older and older and older rocks. And if we look at it at a cross section, we see that it looks like a syncline, but no matter how we oriented this cross section, we would always kind of get this U shape, because it's more of a three-dimensional low now, as opposed to a syncline, which continues on in one direction. If the opposite occurs, if things are pushed together and we get an arch-like structure in the rocks, and now once again a 3D arch, this is something that we call a dome. And so if we look at this cross section here, we can see once again the oldest rocks to the youngest rocks, occur as we move upward. The oldest rocks to the youngest rocks occur as we move upward. And this happens on both sides of this block, because once again, this is a three-dimensional structure. So now if we were on the map on the top here, what we would see is we'd still have a flat area right in the middle, but now all of the rocks are dipping away from the center of this structure. So these rocks here are dipping out in this direction, these rocks here are dipping down in this direction into the ground, and so forth. So two different things. Right now we get we still get a flat area in the middle, but now in a dome, all of the rocks are dipping away from the center of the structure. And also we can see that it's the opposite pattern of age. We would get the oldest rocks exposed at the center of the dome, and then we would get younger and younger rocks moving out towards the edge of the dome. And a famous example of a dome in the United States is the Black Hills of South Dakota. So if you've been to Mount Rushmore, that's right in the Black Hills, in the crystalline rock in the middle here, which is a granite. And this granite has intruded and pushed up this area here, so that all the rocks around the edge are dipping away from here. So as we go off in this direction, rocks are dipping down in this direction, down in this direction. So overall, we would call this a dome. There would be a flat area in the middle where the granite is, and then all these other rocks along the side would be dipping away from the center of the dome.